Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Reflection, rejuvenation, rewards, rahmah, and remote are all words that come to mind as we graciously enter another Ramadan. Sisters and brothers, friends and family, welcome to the 2021 Emgage Ramadan Gala. My name is Aisha Ahmed, and I'm the Deputy Organizing Director at Emgage. Since last Ramadan, we were all witnesses to the heartbreaking challenges of a pandemic and the contentious politics of a presidential election year. Despite these difficult chapters, we were also witness to some historic wins for our community, especially the way we showed up at the polls. In Michigan, we saw a significant increase in primary turnout. In Congressional District 13 alone, we saw a jump from 7% in 2016 to 20% turnout in 2020. That's a 13% jump. In the state of Texas, our data shows us how we've increased the electorate size, and Muslim turnout for the general jumped from 65% in 2016 to 71%. And in Florida, despite the very strong voter suppression efforts we still saw an increase in turnout. Excuse me, my Ramadan voice. In Miami-Dade, Duval, Broward, Palm Beach, Hillsborough, Pinellas, just to name a few. And this is all just a sneak peek of the amazing data we have to share with you all in the coming weeks. And I'd be remiss if I didn't recognize my brilliant partner, Muhammad Gula, who has been such a large force behind all this work. But above it all, one thing was clear. There was something that drove those Muslim voters. Something that drove every Muhammad and every Aisha, every Bilal and every Fatima in the lead up to Tuesday, November 3rd. Mail-in ballots or driving to your polling locations with a mask on. There was something that drove that action. That something was faith. Faith that their vote would be one more building block to achieving Muslim political power. Faith in their community to take action alongside them, that they were one in a million. Faith that organizations like Emgage would continue to show up and advocate for them always. We will show up. And now we have a chance to honor that faith and take the momentum of that election and drive it home for some policy wins, some policy achievements. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about today with human rights at home and abroad. So to kick us off with an opening prayer and dua, it is my esteemed honor and pleasure to welcome Imam Majid of the Adams Center in Virginia to open up the program. Assalamu alaikum, Imam Majid. How are you? Ramadan Kareem. How's it going?
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much, Aisha, for a wonderful introduction and inspiring us about this great news about what Muslims have done in Michigan and other places. In the name of God, this beautiful month of Ramadan, we need to reflect and think about the spirit of Ramadan. Ramadan is a month of hope that brings a lot of hope to us because it shows us the possibilities that we can achieve in the spiritual arena, in the spiritual realm, which is the self-control and give us the feeling and understanding for how about other people and our community in our nation feel. Because fasting meant to have us to come closer to those who are vulnerable. There's many people don't have enough food. When you talk about human rights, Islam is to teach all of us how to connect ourselves to all of those who are most vulnerable people in society. That's why Ramadan is a month of charity, of giving, that you give to all good causes that uplift the community and uplift the nation. Ramadan is a month also that remind us that faith is connected always to social actions and social justice. That's why you see in the Holy Quran, God connected prayer with social justice, with feeding the people and advocating in the behalf of the needy and the poor in society. As the Holy Quran says, أَرَأَيْتَ الَّذِي يُكَذِّبُ بِالدِّينِ فَذَلِكَ الَّذِي يَدُعُّ الْيَتِيمَ وَلَا يَحُضُّ عَلَى طَعَامِ الْمِسْكِينِ. Have you seen a person with no faith or lack of faith? Is a person oppress the orphan, is a person neglect they're not advocating for those who are in need in society. Therefore, the rituals and social actions and social justice are connected. And I'm so glad that Emgage have hold this gala in Ramadan, in the first Friday of Ramadan, to energize everybody to do what they're supposed to do, advocate for social justice in a local community, nation, around the world. May God Almighty protect all of us. And let us pray for those who are suffering around the world and for those who have been facing police brutality. We have lost 2 people just recently. We pray for those people. We pray for the people who've been lost because of this pandemic. We pray for those people who lost their job and they're looking for financial stability. We pray for the whole nation. We pray for healing. We pray for the Uyghurs and our brothers and sisters and Rohingyas around the world. There's so much a need for us to work and to do things that improve people's life and condition. May God Almighty protect all of us, and may God bless you and bless this beautiful nation of ours. Ameen. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam. Jazakallah khair, Imam Majid. That was an incredibly beautiful reminder, and even more special on the first Friday and first Jummah of Ramadan. Thank you so much. To turn our program forward, I'm thrilled to share that we have a special message for you all from the White House, from Cedric Richmond, the Senior Advisor to the President and the Director of the White House Office of Public Engagement. We have a special video for you all.
Hello, everyone, and Ramadan Kareem. Thank you for inviting me to be a part of your annual Ramadan Gala. It is a true honor to join you virtually for this special occasion. Let me start by thanking Emgage for your tireless efforts to educate, engage, and empower Muslim Americans to create the change they want to see in the world. Since this time last year, you have played a critical role in many important victories for our country, including record Muslim voter turnout this past November and the end of the Muslim travel ban, which went against everything we stand for as a country. I also want to thank Wael Karam and the entire Emgage team for your leadership and the tremendous impact you've had in communities all over the country. We are so grateful for your partnership. As President Biden said at Emgage Million Muslim Vote Summit, Muslim American voices matter to our communities, to our country. And this has never been more true than it is today, as our country faces a multitude of overlapping challenges, from the COVID-19 pandemic to systemic racism, to the economic downturn, to a warming climate. We know Muslim Americans are stepping up and answering the call to work for change. From serving as frontline workers, teachers, and doctors, to working for justice, opportunity, and peace as organizers, lawyers, and public servants across the nation, Muslim Americans are playing an instrumental role in moving our country forward. Many of you know that I'm from Louisiana, and I'm proud to have represented the vibrant Muslim communities there for many years in Congress. I will always be grateful to Muslim Americans from all over the country who travel to Louisiana to support their fellow Americans in the aftermath of Hurricanes Katrina and Rita. The truth is, your community is and has always been a critical part of the American story, and we are committed to continuing our important work together today and every day. To that end, we are also grateful for Emgage's partnership as a founding member of the COVID-19 Community Corps, as well as your support of the American Jobs Plan. We know that in response to this unprecedented pandemic, this is no time to build back to the way things were. This is the moment to reimagine and rebuild a new economy. The American Jobs Plan is an investment in America that will create millions of good jobs, rebuild our country's infrastructure, and position the United States to compete on the global stage. We look forward to continuing our work together to get it passed and create millions of good-paying jobs. As we work together, we also know that, sadly, Muslim Americans continue to be targeted by bullying, bigotry, and hate crimes, which have no place in our country and our communities. As President Biden said, this prejudice and these attacks are wrong. They are unacceptable, and they must stop. No one in America should ever live in fear of expressing his or her faith. I can assure you that this administration is committed to protecting the rights and safety of all people. As you come together today to reaffirm your commitment to human rights at home and abroad, we want you to know that this administration stands with you and that America stands with you. On behalf of the President and the Vice President, we send warm wishes to you and your families for an inspiring and rewarding month of fasting, prayer, and reflection. Thank you.
Again, that was an incredibly strong message that we were so proud and grateful to share with you all today. So thank you so much. And next, we'd like to kick it off into our very first conversation. I'd like to introduce our National Policy Director and Deputy Director, Missy Manawat, to kick us off. Assalamualaikum Iman, how are you? Ramadan Kareem.
Walaikum salam, Ramadan Mubarak. Thank you so much, Aisha. And I'm so excited to be hosting this next panel.
Let's do it.
Great. As we get set up, I can take this opportunity to introduce our panelists that we do have with us. We are thrilled to have Representative Andre Carson. Congressman Carson has served the 7th District of Indiana since 2008, and we like to celebrate firsts here at Emgage, and he is the first Muslim to serve on the House Intelligence Committee. Additionally, it was recently announced that he has been selected yet again to serve as a senior whip for the 117th congressional session. We're also joined by Muna Jondi, who is an immigration attorney practicing in Flint, Michigan. She's also a cooperating attorney with the ACLU of Michigan. She currently serves as a co-chair for the election protection for the Genesee County Democratic Party and was appointed by Governor Whitmer to serve as chairwoman for the Michigan Women's Commission. Thank you so much for joining us today for part of our panel to talk about human rights right here in our own backyard. I wanted to start with a general question to both of our panelists. As we gather tonight in the spirit of Ramadan to reflect on our values and challenge ourselves to refocus our priorities, I wanted to ask, as we approach human rights through a domestic lens, what are the top 3 challenges you face in your role as a community leader? We can start with you, Muna.
Thank you, Iman. First of all, thank you for having me. And it's an honor to sit and serve on the same panel as you, Congressman, as well. Ramadan Kareem to everybody. I think in terms of challenges for our community, I was thinking about this, and I think that, different communities experience different challenges, but I do think that there are some that unite all of us. And I think one of them, for me, I come from an immigrant community. I'm the child of immigrant parents. And I really feel that, educating our community on the importance of political engagement is still a challenge. And I think it's a challenge that many other communities can relate to. I think educating our community on the importance of our vote, when you're talking about immigrants who potentially oftentimes came from countries that didn't have the right to vote. They didn't understand the value of what that vote means to now encourage it. And obviously, I know that Emgage is very involved in that. I'm here in Michigan, so you have your footprint here as well. And then I think women in particular. I think generally getting our community politically engaged and out to vote, but I really feel that a challenge is getting our women to understand and appreciate and stand up in that arena.
Excellent, thank you. And the same question for you, Congressman Carson.
No, thank you for the opportunity. Moon is always prolific. I love hearing her share her story and her insights. And thank you, Iman, and to my fellow Hoosier, Aisha Ahmed. So good to see her. We're so proud of her. I think firstly at the local level, I believe that one of the main challenges that we face as a country is that everyone living in America is not treated equally under the law today. Secondly, at the national level, many people know that the constitutional principles of due process and equal protection are central to the protection of the civil rights of all Americans. So whether you are talking about police brutality or comprehensive immigration reform or airport profiling, all of these hot button issues are usually centered around treating certain minority communities differently than the majority population. And finally, at the international level, I'm very concerned about the genocidal rise of weaponized hatred in places like China and Burma, parts of Africa, where we continue to witness ethnic cleansing and even internment camps. And that is why, as a proud African American Muslim member of Congress, I will always be there as a proud ally for marginalized communities when it comes to human rights across the globe.
Yes, and thank you so much for all of your support on legislation, Congressman Carson. We're excited to be joined by Attorney General Keith Ellison, who will be joining our panel. Keith Ellison was sworn in as Minnesota's 30th Attorney General on January 7th, 2019. Prior to serving as Attorney General, he represented Minnesota's 5th District in the U.S. House of Representatives and was the first Muslim. Thank you so much for joining us.
How you doing, everyone? I'm trying to get this echo out.
No,
There we go.
we are great. Thank you so much.
Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Ramadan Mubarak, everybody. Hey, Brother Andre, how's it going?
Big bro.
Good to see you, man.
You
Well, yeah, what a pleasure it is to be with everybody. I really do miss all of you. I spend more time here working on Minnesota issues, which seem to be getting a little national attention, I understand. And, we're in the middle of a trial against Derek Chauvin. It is my case. I am the lead prosecutor on the case. And I know many of y'all know me as a legislator, but really I'm a trial lawyer. I always have been. Never, I mean, the only real thing I know how to do is to try a case, you know? And so we're prosecuting Derek Chauvin. We have closing arguments on Monday. And that's what it is. So make dua for us. Make dua to touch the hearts of the jurors to see the truth and to have the courage to speak it, right? The word verdict is truth. So we asking them for nothing more than the truth. And the truth is that Derek Chauvin murdered George Floyd. And the truth is that the police supposed to protect and serve. They don't supposed to kill people, and they don't supposed to use excessive force against people. And, this problem that we're dealing with right now is an age-old problem. Some of you may be surprised to know that in 1968, there was a famous sociologist who came before Congress to give testimony at the Kerner Commission. Anybody ever heard of the Kerner Commission? After the 1968 unrest, there was, of course, a commission. We always have commissions after these things. And he said, Kenneth Clark, the sociologist, said, where do I start? I read the report on after the riots or the unrest in 1919 in Chicago. And I read the reports in 1934, in 1943, 1968, and they all read exactly the same. The state uses its power to maintain the vertical hierarchy along the lines of race, to be sure, but also every other vertical hierarchy, religion, everything. The state uses its authority to do that. And our quest is to make the state truly reflect justice, truly take into consideration the voices and the humanity of everyone. It's really tough to have to argue that somebody is a human being. They want to argue they want to argue that George Floyd was both superhuman and subhuman, that he was so big and strong that they needed to use all this force on him. And at the same time, he was so weak and frail that they didn't kill him. It was just his bad heart condition, So, I mean, it's so typical. The problem about the George Floyd case is how unlike everything, how alike everything it is. There's nothing about it that new about people being killed and beat to death on video. Rodney King, I mean, when was that? 1991? You know, there's nothing new about it. And now we see a 13-year-old kid. The officer says the kid had a gun. The kid did not have a gun. The video shows that. And, you know, we're dealing with one right out here in Brooklyn Center, which is a stone. It's like the difference between Minneapolis and Brooklyn Center, Andre, is the difference between Washington, D.C. and Roslyn or Arlington. It's an adjacent suburb.
Absolutely.
Right?
Okay, that's helpful.
Yeah, so it's just the what we're going through. The Muslim community has to stand up for justice, has to hold out firm for justice, even if it's against your own selves or your own loved ones. We have to be, that's who we got to be. That's what it's about. There's no use in the Muslim community organizing if our only goal is to be another self-interested ethnic group, only concerned about ourselves. We have to be a Muslim ummah that stands up for what is right and for what is good, that says that the only thing worthy of worship is God alone. And so we don't worship titles, we don't worship money, we don't worship status, we don't worship bank accounts, we worship God, full stop. And no better time to have that conversation than right now in the holy month of Ramadan. So let me just tell you, I've been enjoying being an attorney general. I mean, being in Congress, I loved it. I loved every minute of it. But Andre used to ask me, brother, if you was going to do something else, what might you do? And what would I say?
Should I give the secrets away yet or what? Are we still on warfare or no?
you can tell him that one. I'd say, yeah, I want to be attorney general, right?
Yeah. I'm looking at other things too, but right, attorney general.
But you know what? For now, right? I mean, I still got let's
go.
So, but my point is, the Muslim community has to be a community saying what is true and what is just and what is right. And if they will snatch your hijab off, they will, or hurt you because of wearing your hijab, they'll hurt you for wearing a hoodie. And we know that, right? And if they will, but look at this. The man last week was sprayed in the face with mace, and he's wearing the uniform of the United States military. So what is the problem here? Look, a year before George Floyd was murdered, as Attorney General, I convened a working group on reducing deadly force encounters with the police. Somebody said, well, why don't you just make it about police shootings? Well, Eric Garner and George Floyd were not killed with a gun. We're talking about all excessive force, however it is. And so, this is our mission and this is our goal. And this is not just the criminal justice system. Let's not just blame the police. I'm not saying that they don't need massive change, but what about when you get to court, right? Everybody knows that whether you're talking about a lot of African Americans who've been exonerated, like the Central Park Five, or the injustice done to Muslims, like in the Holy Land case in Texas. I mean, this is not just a problem of race. It's a matter of where do you stand in the vertical hierarchy. And if they say this country, Muslims are not powerful, we're going to use our power to prosecute you unjustly, then we will find ourselves on the wrong side of that system. And then all the way to sentencing. The Muslim community, thank God some of us have been able to do well in business. I'm so proud of you, thank God. But can we take just a little bit of the rewards that God has given us to try to build a better society, And that's the real challenge that we have, So I'll just stop right there, and very honored to be on the panel. Miss all of y'all. The one downside of being Attorney General is I don't get to see you enough. And so I'm really looking at this as a treat.
No, thank you so much. And that actually was a beautiful segue kind of into what I wanted this panel to be about. We very clearly know what the issues are that we have to face. There are so many things that are wrong in our own backyard. And to Muna's point, ways that we can be engaged as a community. And to your point, Attorney General, how do we be better allies? So my next question is for Congressman Carson. And I wanted to take this moment to really talk about what the solutions are. This is a two-part question. As a member of the House and Senior Whip, what opportunities do you see in Congress to effectively address the domestic human rights And second, as we're navigating this system post the Trump era, and there's still some polarization we do see, where are the opportunities where we can as a community affect long-lasting positive changes?
Well, thank you. Brother Keith is always on fire. I think I'm his Indiana campaign manager. He has such a bright future, and he's always a great legal mind to listen to, but he always said Attorney General. Every time I pressed him, we talked about other stuff, but that's for another segment. But I think to answer your question, I think that the COVID-19 pandemic has caused one of the worst domestic human rights catastrophes that our country has seen in a long time. That's why I voted for the American Rescue Plan, which implements a plan to boldly address the ongoing health fallout and economic crises caused by the pandemic. I think during these polarizing times, we have to work together. If it's not done in a bipartisan way, I think we have to leverage both branches of government, the Senate and the House, to push the administration to really deal with some of the issues that are impacting our country. And that's where we can have a voice. You know, we're looking at the American Rescues Plan. A lot of people from stimulus relief were able to get $1,400 direct payments. But now as we talk about a massive public works program dealing with infrastructure, which equates to jobs, this is a time for folks in our communities who are running startups, who are engineers, who own construction companies, to really be a part of creating the kind of generational wealth that other groups have been able to create through contracting with local, state, and federal government. And so I think, you know, it gets uncomfortable, and I'm glad that Keith's on this call, because Keith, continuing what was started when you were here, I'm putting together a phone call with Sister Ilhan, myself, Rashida. I want you to be a part of it if your schedule allows, and a lot of people who are listening. We want to filter out who's going to be on this call, because we're pressing the DCCC to really look very seriously at recruiting Muslims to run for Congress. Now, they're numbers based, so they're going to look at numbers in districts, but I contend, as has Keith in the past, that a lot of these districts are winnable. And if we aren't leveraging our voting block, this has been my project since I got into Congress, to really hold either party accountable, but especially the Democratic Party, and saying, if we're giving you our money and our votes, this is what we want in return. We're fighting, we're advocating right now on behalf of a lot of Muslims in terms of some federal appointments. If we have more congressional voices and voices in the Senate, this will be easier when it comes to the blue slip process. This will become much easier as we have more members of Congress who chair committees, and more members of Congress where we can leverage our voting block and effectively hold up a vote until we say we want our voices heard. So I think a part of it comes there. I was just at an iftar the other day held by some Bosnian American friends, and we were talking about some of the parallels that we saw in the early 90s as it related to the conflict in Bosnia, and some of the issues that are happening now, even globally. And I say, even though we come from different parts of the globe and we have different experiences, we are one ummah. And that ummah, we have differences of opinions and philosophies, but there has to be some kind of unified effort to leverage our block in these very tumultuous times. And I think it starts with our political engagement. It starts with supporting great legal minds like Brother Keith Ellison, because if he's not going to be the future Supreme Court justice, I'd love to have him in the governor's mansion and ultimately at 1600 Pennsylvania. But it's going to take us coming together and leveraging the great minds who are on this call to show the parties and show our country we are formidable. And by Allah's grace and mercy, we're here to stay.
Thank you so much, Congressman. And I know that you have a tight schedule today. So thank you.
I have a flight. So Keith knows about that lifestyle. So I have a flight. I'm going to try to catch my flight. But Jazakallah khair, Ramadan Kareem. Salaam alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Salaam alaikum. We'll talk soon.
You already know.
Well, the congressman actually set up for our next question, which I wanted to invite Mona to address, is as we're talking about building power, it's important to also know that our country is facing a very important issue when it comes to voting rights and protections. So this one is for you, Mona. We've been witnessing in the news some deeply problematic voter suppression bills in various states, most notably in Georgia. I'd love to hear, and if you can give us a bit of the landscape around election protections, what's at stake, and how, as an active community, we can work together to combat problematic legislation, both at the local level, given your experiences and positions in Michigan, and also on the federal level.
Thanks, Iman. I just want to echo, as Attorney General Ellison said, it's a tale as old as time, whether it's the police officers killing Black boys and Black men. Voter suppression is a tale as old as time. So, it used to be literacy tests and poll taxes. And, we've moved into modern era with mass incarceration. It became felons and purging voter rolls. So this isn't something new. So I think the question is, why now? Why is it that as of March of 2021, 47 states have introduced over 250 bills to make access to voting more difficult? And really, the answer to me is very simple. It's because voter turnout was so high. And I believe, as a country, we are a more open and we are more democratic leaning country. And when you have the, I say it to my friends, we were saved by Atlanta, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Detroit. I mean, Black folks saved America, whether it was the presidential election, whether it was the senatorial election, the runoff race in Georgia. So then what's happening now? It's in response to widespread voting. And obviously, who is it that will suffer from access to voting? It's folks in urban areas, and that means mostly people of color. So I know everybody was focusing on Georgia and you can't give them water and you can't give them food when they're in line, but really let's look at a lot of what is the other bills, and they're passing, folks. Like these aren't bills that are getting introduced and getting knocked down. These are bills that are actually passing. And what are they doing? They're limiting access to ballot boxes. So places that, are like taking out 50% of their ballot boxes. Well, what does that mean? That means that my local neighborhood is not going to have a drop-off box. So how am I going to get my absentee ballot to get counted? They're requiring that when you apply for an absentee ballot, you have to submit a picture of your driver's license. Well, I don't know the last time, most Americans had photocopiers in their houses. So there's all of these additional restrictions that are being put in place. And I think that, we have to be really careful, because a lot of us are focused oftentimes on national issues, and we're not focused on what's happening in our own state legislatures. I mean, we're lucky right now in Michigan. We passed in 2018 these, Proposal 3. It was a referendum because we can't get any ease of voter access bills passed through our legislature, because it's a split legislature and it'll never pass. So we had to get it through a statewide referendum to really make things like open, like absentee voting, which was never open to us prior to 2018, which 2020 was the first general election that we had that. So people don't watch what's happening in their local states. Like, we have a governor that I know is not going to sign any bills. So I'm like, yeah, whatever, y'all can make all the noise you want up in Lansing, but at the end of the day, Whitmer's not signing on to anything. So, good luck with that. But a lot of people aren't focused. And so I really think that we need to be aware right now. If there's 47 states, then chances are all of you that are here, legislation has been introduced in your state. And so what is it that you can do to get mobilized to really stop these voter suppression? And honestly, I don't think that these things are going to impact me. I'm somebody that lives in the suburbia. I'm somebody who lives in a relatively socioeconomic privileged community, but I know that it's going to impact all of my neighbors around me. So, just to echo what Attorney General Ellison said, as Muslims, we can't just be working on issues. We can't just become another community that says me. That's not actually what our faith framework is. Our faith framework is, we look around and we have to see when injustices are happening, we stand up for it. even when it doesn't actually impact us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mona. And I really just want to underscore the importance, like you said, of the local legislation, whether it's within your state or even hyper-localized with your county councils. It's indicative that we pay attention. Which brings me to my last question for you, Attorney General, is we do recognize that this issue of voter suppression is indicative of a deeper racial issue in our country. We already discussed, that Minnesota has been in the spotlight as you are leading the prosecution for the George Floyd case. And one thing I wanted to leave our viewers with is the understanding that at the federal level, there are certain things being done to address criminal justice reform and true racial equity. But in Minnesota, what can you see and what can we leave our viewers with? What can they do for change at the local levels, which sometimes moves faster and can make a deeper impact for the communities there?
Yeah, thank you for that question. As I was listening to Muna, I thought about something I heard somebody say before. This is not my saying. I heard somebody say this. They said, in years ago, we would form these organizations to help people because they were Muslim. But as our community gets a little more affluent, we will form these organizations because we are Muslim, right? And we'll help whoever needs the help. So we started out helping people because they were Muslim. Now we help people because we are Muslim. And that's what we do. And so it doesn't really matter, inshallah, everybody will have prosperity. God doesn't want poverty for anyone. Poverty is something that mankind does to each other, And so I just want to say that what people can do on the local level is, first of all, get informed. After you get informed, then you got to get involved. And after you get involved, then you got to ask yourself, what does your personality lend itself to? And what does you and your means allow you to do? And the main thing is that no leader, nobody can tell you what to do, but what we can ask you to do is to do something. So like if you are into arts, I don't know, start a writing group, start a debate group. If you do what you can do, but please don't stand on the sideline waiting for others to fix it, because it doesn't work like that. Get involved in your local masjid and say, I'm going to start the Muslim Voters League. And so what we're going to do every single Friday, we're going to be sitting out here at a table, registering Muslim voters, sharing voting information with Muslims, right? And then once we got everybody there done, we're gonna go to the mall and just register voters. We're just gonna do it every Friday, right? So, but like I can't tell everybody what they could do, but you know what you could do, right? So just do it and understand that nobody can do everything, but everybody can do something. Everybody can do something. So I tell you this, I'm 57. I never ran for office till I was 39. I was 39 years old before I ever held any public office at all. I was no kid, whiz kid, getting in office at 22 years old. That wasn't my story. But one day I came home. My wife asked me, what am I upset about? I said, these people at the legislature are passing a lot of stupid laws. She said, well, why don't you just run then? I said, you serious about that? She said, yeah. I said, you serious that you're serious? She said, yeah, do it. Anything to make you, stop walking and moping around here. And so I decided to run for state legislature, and, I won, and that was it, But it started because I saw a necessity and I dove in. I think Muslims should run for office, but let me just say this to every Muslim who's thinking about running for office. Martin Luther King never held any political office. You don't have to be in office to make great change. Rami Nashashibi in Chicago does not hold any political office, and he is reforming and changing South Side of Chicago. And so you don't have to do that. But if that is something you want to do, by all means, jump into it. But don't jump into it because you want to see your name in the paper. Jump into it because you want to make some real changes that people need.
Excellent. No, thank you so much. I jotted down that note that we help people because we are Muslim. I really, really like that. We have 2 more minutes before the end of the panel, and we do want to stay on time for iftar. But I just wanted to leave with both of your elevator pitches about advice for our listeners. And Mona, you brought this up straight in the beginning, which is so important, about the importance of educating on how to get involved in the systems. My question is just the elevator pitch, how important it is for us to remain civically engaged and how we can be better allies through addressing things like voter suppression and issues outside of our community. Mona?
I think that sometimes people get overwhelmed, honestly. Like, I'm looking and there are so many issues to get involved in. And so sometimes people are like, there's just so much going on that I don't know where to start. So, I always say local, 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 start local. You want for election protection. I started 15 years ago as a poll challenger. You go and you volunteer to just go watch at the polls, to make sure that, no funny business is happening, to report it, to get it, taken care of. That's in terms of, I think in terms of election protection. I think regarding I think issues of race and the Black Lives Matter movement, we can't be sitting on the sidelines on this one. And honestly, we have been. And when I say we, I don't mean Muslims, because Muslims, there's a third of us that are Black, right? But I'm saying those of us that come from the immigrant community, we haven't really sort of found our voice, and we're working towards it. So, I'm not saying that we're not working towards it, but I do think our young generation is doing a fantastic job, I think, of coming out and being very vocal on these issues. But it really can be that simple as there's a protest happening in your area, participate in a protest, participate, in anything locally. So that way, for people that feel that they might get overwhelmed with too many issues, I think that that's just the easiest way.
Thank you, Mona. Same for you, Attorney General, the elevator pitch of the importance of being involved and how we can be better allies.
Well, here's my thing on how to be a better ally. If you want a friend, the best way to get a friend is to be one, right? And like I said, one of the things about racism that's so interesting is that we all are deluded into the idea that we are not its victim, right? So if you're Black, you think, well, other people have it worse than me. There's all kinds of ways to trick yourself into thinking that it's not you. But let me just tell you, Muslim community, I don't care if you are, a Bosnian Muslim whose roots are from Europe. I don't care what you look like. You start talking about you're a Muslim, and there's trouble coming your way. And if it doesn't catch you, alhamdulillah. But it's also true that there's been a lot of really wrong things that have happened to people for no other reason than they're Muslim. This kid, Adnan Syed, probably is in prison for life for murder because he's a Muslim, right? And he's just one case. I could name many other cases. We've got to step forward and understand that the criminal justice issue is our issue. It's not somebody else's issue. And we've got to see and by the way, a lot of Muslims, you go to the big buildings in downtown Minneapolis, who is cleaning them? Muslims. Step into a cab, Muslims. Not all Muslims are neurosurgeons, right? There's a lot of working class Muslim people, right? In Minneapolis, there is. In Detroit, there is. A lot of the small business owners scraping by, really hurt by the COVID pandemic, Muslim business people, So let's just understand that this is absolutely our thing, right? This is not somebody else's thing. This is not our Black Muslim brothers' thing. This is our thing. This is all of our thing, right? And so we've got to really look at it that way. And then what we got to do is move out. And I will tell you this, if you think you're just going to hide up in the masjid and not be, this thing's not going to drag you, it's going to drag you. Sooner or later, you're going to find yourself challenged. I think there is a surah in Quran called the spider. Do you believe that you will be, that you will not be tried? Certainly we tried those before you. I'm not the imam, I can't quote like some of y'all. But I mean, you know the verse I'm talking about. Does anybody know the verse I'm talking about? You know, you will be tried. It's coming your way. Rather you should have some allies and know a little bit about how to make social justice change before it hits you, rather than you're just hiding in the masjid, minding your own business, and then all of a sudden, bam, somebody does something to you because you're Muslim and you don't know anybody, you have no allies because you've been hiding in the corner. Better to be involved early before anything happens, while really you're an ally and not a target. Better to get involved in the very beginning. And plus, as Muslims, we just should do things that are pleasing in the eyes of God. Just do good things,
Absolutely.
And so with that, I'll be quiet and I'll just tell you guys I'm up against a 5:30 that I'm late for. And so I'll talk to y'all soon.
Thank you so much. We appreciate your time. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for our panelists. Thank you, Muna. Thank you, Attorney General. Congressman is not with us, but thank you for his participation earlier. And now we're going to segue into a few words from our partners.
As proud long-term partners of Emgage, the Illinois Muslim Civic Coalition knows that it's all connected towards civic justice.
It's about making sure that policies made for us are made with us.
And that we help create and pass just laws.
And that we vote in elections held every year for ethical public leaders.
And that we strive for redistricting because representation matters. All leaders should understand us and some should look like us.
It's all connected. Our partnership with Emgage ensures national and regional impact, all towards civic justice.
Assalamu alaikum and Ramadan Mubarak. My name is Rami Khan, the Chief Operating Officer at the Muslim Public Affairs Council. MPAC is proud of our partnership with Emgage and Emgage Action, as our policy mission aligns with Emgage's organizing mission of establishing an effective American Muslim constituency for the purpose of our shared values of justice, mercy, and compassion. It's an honor to be with you tonight for the Emgage Virtual Gala. On behalf of everybody at MPAC, Ramadan Mubarak. Thank you.
Thank you so much for our partners. It's such an honor to work so closely with everyone from across the country. And now it is my honor to introduce the one, the only, Wael El-Ziyad, our Chief Executive Officer. Assalamu alaikum, Wael. Ramadan Kareem.
Ramadan Mubarak, dear Aisha. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Great to see you all. So I think I'm introducing the next panel, right?
Yes.
All right. So we have a wonderful second panel for all of you. We have just listened to some incredible discussion regarding the importance of human rights, centering human rights here at home. What about abroad? We have a fantastic panel that's going to be discussing the state of human rights in the world and what the U.S. foreign policy direction is looking like under the Biden administration, what our role as Muslim Americans should be in support of a true human rights agenda. I have Jumana Qadur, who is the non-resident fellow and the head of the Syria program at the Atlantic Council. Tom Malinowski is the U.S. Congressman for New Jersey's 7th Congressional District. A Democrat, he previously served as the Assistant Secretary of State for Democracy, Human Rights, and Labor in the Obama administration. And I was fortunate to serve with him when he was at the State Department. We also have Nuri Turkle, who was appointed by the Speaker of the House of Representative Nancy Pelosi as Commissioner for the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom. In September of last year, Turkle was named as one of the Time Magazine's 100 most influential people in the world. I also want to add that he is a proud Uyghur American, and he himself was born in a re-education camp. I want to get started with you, Congressman Malinowski. You have been and you are known as a strong human rights advocate. I've seen your work firsthand while serving at the State Department. It seems that whenever we click on the news or go online, we see the human rights situation getting worse, not better, somewhere in this world. We're seeing what's happening to the Uyghur Muslims in China. We were tracking what's happened and the genocide that has befallen the Rohingya people of Myanmar, and now the situation has gotten even worse, where following the coup d'etat, the military seems to be unleashing on the entire population. I'm someone who worked very diligently on US policy in the Middle East, and we've seen the situation following the Arab Spring, particularly in places like in Syria and Libya. What should be the role of the United States now? We have a new administration that's trying to tackle so many issues domestically. But what should the US realistically be doing, and we as citizens be advocating for, to address some of these acute and just awful human rights violations, genocides, ethnic cleansing, forced displacement and disappearance? What's a realistic policy approach by this administration from where you sit now in Congress? And you are also on mute.
Sorry. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. Thank you so much, Wael. And it's great to see you. We were fighters in the same cause in the Obama administration, and it's a never-ending, enduring cause, as your question suggests. Look, over the last 20, 30, 40 years, we've seen this idea spread throughout the world that everybody is entitled to the same basic human rights. It's a really powerful idea. It is a universal idea, as many of us often stress. And once people get this idea into their heads that they should be free, that they should, that they have a right to expect their leaders to serve them rather than demand service of them, that idea becomes very dangerous to those in power in authoritarian countries. And so we're seeing a backlash right now. It's the same clash of ideas, the same contest between freedom, liberty, the rule of law, justice, and authoritarianism. But we're seeing very powerful authoritarian states now gain the confidence to try to fight back. Russia, China being the two most powerful. And so, we're seeing the specific manifestation of that in some of the situations that you described. What China is doing to the Uyghur people, what it is doing to Hong Kong to snuff out liberty and the rule of law there. Burma, after about 10 years of not perfect democracy, but relative freedom, the military, which had ruled the country for decades, struck back, seized power again. But the idea is very strong. Look at the courage of the Burmese people coming out day after day after day after day, despite knowing that they are going to be shot at, that some of them will die in that struggle. That shows you the power of the idea. So what can the United States do? We are seen around the world as an originator of that idea, as a model of putting that idea into action. The most important thing we can do is to model it well. It's to show the world that a democratic country that respects the rule of law can solve its own problems, can build a just society, can conquer the coronavirus, can build beautiful infrastructure, something we're working on in Congress right now. During the Trump years, we were not setting a good example, and that was very, very good for China, very good for Russia, because they could point to the United States and say, you do not want to be like them. That is changing now under this new administration, and we have the opportunity, as we are setting a good model at home, to be a force for human rights around the world. Again, our voice still matters a great deal. Authoritarian countries spend millions of dollars in Washington, D.C. paying lobbyists to persuade Congress and the administration not to sanction them, not to criticize them, which tells me they really care when we do those things, and we should do those things much more consistently. Our activism has already changed this administration's policies towards Saudi Arabia, for example. We're constructing a very new and more principled relationship, I think, with some of our Gulf allies that never used to be criticized by the United States for human rights abuses. The administration has responded very strongly to what has happened in Burma. And on China, that is the biggest challenge of all, but we've seen Secretary Blinken call what is happening to the Uyghur people an act of genocide. And the words are, I hope, a prelude to action. So what can we do? Make sure, keep fighting for our principles inside the United States, to make that model as strong as possible, and use our collective voice to urge the administration to do what only the United States can do around the world, to be a country that is both principled, that is both powerful and principled.
Thank you, Congressman, for that. Jumana, I know that you are a tireless human rights advocate, and you are also an Arab and a Muslim American woman. You see our communities are very diverse. We care about a lot of issues at home and abroad, and we should. From Palestine to Kashmir, to what's happening to Indian Muslims, in supposedly the world's largest democracy, to what's affecting Muslim communities in Europe today, even in France. You spent many years thinking and researching about many of these issues. What's your advice regarding kind of the principles that should underpin American Muslim human rights advocacy abroad? Are there certain core values to keep us consistent as we pursue the various issues that we deal with, whether it's Yemen or Libya? I mean, the list is never ending.
Oh, thank you, Wael. It's a pleasure to be here, and it's an honor to speak alongside Congressman Malinowski and Nouri at USERF, where I actually used to work. I spent a few years there, so it's really good to see excellent representation there. I think we're entering a phase where for many of us, it is the first time that there are so many bleeding conflicts across the quote unquote Muslim majority world. I think for a long time, as Muna was alluding to earlier, a lot of immigrant families focused a lot on the Palestine-Israel conflict. It was a rallying point for many people in terms of human rights advocacy. And now, 10 years into the Arab Spring, there's been, there are several countries that remain on fire, and new ones where, conflicts are developing, where issues are arising, even if it's not full-blown military conflicts, but major human rights violations that people are no longer willing to be quiet about. And that's nothing to say of what's been happening in China to the Uyghurs that many people, I think, were actually quite ignorant about, including the Muslim American community. So I think that the most important thing, and you have been sort of working on this alongside me, is I think the first piece of advice I have is to start having conversations with one another. That if we want to call ourselves human rights advocates, I can't just be a human rights advocate for Syria or for Lebanon or for Saudi Arabia. That we need to reflect back and have a certain set of principles that we are willing to stand up and claim are really ours, and that we will apply in any context, right? So this is coming up, for example, with the Iran deal, or it's coming up with the Yemen conflict, or, we've obviously seen it with Syria. So I think the first thing, and that we've been trying to do on a smaller scale, and I've absolutely seen happen at a more frequent pace, being the 10-year anniversary of the Arab Spring, is that people are starting to finally talk to each other. Mm-hmm. I had dinner, for example, with a Yemeni yesterday, who was against the Saudi coalition, the Saudi coalition, as well as what the Houthis are doing. And just this kind of dialogue, I think, is the first part. And it's really important because a lot of times, and this is something that I think the Democratic Party has made an important part of the policy is trying to look at what local needs are, right? Is not us determining what people's destiny should be, but listening to what local populations want and need. And so, this requires us talking to those very same communities, especially in the diaspora. So seizing that opportunity in order to ask them, how can we best help you while we're also advocating for, X or Y country? I'll stop there.
Thank you, Jumana. And your point about us talking to one another, in the age of Islamophobia, everyone thinks that, Muslims are just this one group that's all hanging out together. And we're very diverse, we're very spread out. And a third of our community is African-American. They were here before most people, and their issues matter quite a bit. And folks ask me, and I'm going to segue to you, Nori. Folks are generally puzzled in the Muslim community why Emgage cares about the Uyghur. And not that we shouldn't, but they say, well, why did you pick the Uyghur issue? Well, why shouldn't we? And how could we not? I don't have any Uyghur on my board or on my staff, but what is happening there is unacceptable. And I'm someone who worked on Syria and Iraq, and what I'm seeing in China is truly horrifying. I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit right now about your assessment of, I know there was some good moves by the Biden administration. I know that Secretary of State Tony Blinken affirmed that what's happening there is genocide. Can you tell our audience a little bit what you're hoping to see out of this administration, and also from your Muslim American community? What do we want? What should we be doing right now beyond what has already been done? The Human Rights Act for the Uyghur was passed. I know that Tom played a huge role in that as well. Thank you, Congressman, for that. What should be the next steps on this?
Thank you so much. First of all, Ramadan Kareem. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam, Ramadan Mubarak.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much for mentioning your organizational support. When I received that email from you and Iman, I was so delighted because that email came to me during the time that I was tortured by Western media and various speaking engagements that I've had with a simple question: where is your Muslim community? So I can answer that question. It's tough. How do you do that? How do you give them a plausible answer when the Chinese calling Uyghur Islam as a mental illness, believing in Islam as likening it to thought viruses that need to be cleared out with the chemicals, and MBS goes to Beijing where his name and the way that I greeted you, Assalamu alaikum, are banned, and comes back home and praises Xi Jinping's China for his treatment of the Muslim Uyghurs. So it was such a delightful a moment for me to hear from you, and I appreciate that you supported the Uyghur Human Rights Policy Act, which is historic in many ways. And I wanted to thank Congressman Malinowski for his friendship and support over the years of my work advocating Uyghur human rights. So we have lots of laws. If it's not implemented, it would be meaningless. The UHRP Act specifically directs executive branch to take a number of actions. One, to protect the Uyghur American community from the Chinese harassment, but that has not been fully implemented because Chinese are right here with me as we speak. And also the Uyghur American community have been trying to get their families out of the concentration camps. I know my fellow Uyghur Americans here at home contact me regularly as if that I can make a difference in their lives. They individually contact members of Congress and the representatives in the US government, but things like that has not been done. I recently spoke with a Uyghur American young lady whose mother has been taken into the concentration camp initially and imposed 20 years imprisonment. And I know her from my past interactions during her trip to the United States. She is the least political person that I know in the Uyghur community, a soft-spoken mother of two, grandmother of three American beautiful children, are languishing in a concentration camp. She committed no crime other than being just a Uyghur Muslim. And our government has not been really helpful, including the case of my own family situation. You may find it amusing for me to say this, but I don't like public holidays because it makes me very anxious and to the extent angry that I cannot have a normal life. I came to the United States as a student initially and granted asylum. I've been here 26 years. Of those 26 years, I was only able to spend 11 months with my parents who brought me to this world and the horrific condition that you described. I haven't seen my mother since my law school graduation. I was just telling Congressman Malinowski earlier, my dad's health is deteriorating. Why am I bringing this? You know, under the normal circumstances, as an American official, as an American citizen, I could hop on a plane and go to be at my parents' bedside. I cannot do it. And also, if something bad happens to my father, he will not have a dignified funeral service because anything relates to Islam can be seen as a sign of extremism. Since April 2017, with the enactment of something called de-extremification measure, the Chinese authorities banned most of the socially accepted behaviors in any other places around the world, including growing beard, encouraging family members to marry Uyghur Muslims, fasting, praying, attending public prayers, all of it, funeral services. You cannot have more than 20 people at a funeral events. They don't even allow you to use religious names. So in the face of all of this atrocities being committed against Uyghur people, now our government officially recognized what's happening to the Uyghurs as a genocide and crimes against humanity. It's reasonable to expect our government to do more. It will be unfair for me to say they haven't done anything because both the previous and current administration have announced nearly 70 executive decisions on top of what's happening in the US Congress. So we made some progress in the last 2-3 years, but as we speak, people are dying in Chinese concentration camps. What we're talking about, the industrial scale concentration camps that is monitored as reported in the New Yorker magazine piece just published about a week ago. I invite you to take a look at it. This tells the story of a Kazakh woman, Anar Sabit, who wrongfully detained and now wandering around somewhere in Central Asia. So in this particular occasion, I'd like to highlight that the Uyghurs are one of the most ancient Muslims. Uyghurs have been practicing Islamic faith since 12th, 13th century. They are one of the people contributed, not only verbally, but factually to the Muslim civilization through literature, architecture, and arts. So, and that proud nation, that ancient people are on the verge of being destroyed by communist regime in Beijing. I like to use the term communist regime, Xi Jinping's China, because I don't want people to think what I'm saying is against a particular Asian or Chinese American group. So, and the Ramadan is banned for some time. So I'd like to ask you to get on the phone, call the representatives, and ask her to support the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act. And also, I would like you to pray for your Uyghur brothers and sisters. And if you have a means to support Uyghur groups, we have a sizable Uyghur refugees in the Middle East, in Turkey, that they need your help. And also those parents of missing children. We're talking about 800,000 Uyghur children have been taken to the state-run orphanages. So how much time do I have? I wish I have an hour and a half to go through this. So concentration camp is back, genocide is ongoing, slavery is back, more than 80 global brand that we as consumers use around the world have been tainted or made by Uyghur slaves. So I appreciate your support once again. I am grateful that I have you as my community working on these important issues. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nori. It's really just heartbreaking to hear this. I want to, share with our audience that Emgage was one of the early organizations that advocated for a boycott of the Beijing Olympics as early as 2017. And we still do. And we are a pragmatic and realistic organization as well. We know that that is a difficult ask, but we want to use it to highlight the absurdity of hosting these games in a country that's committing these mass violations. Tom, I want to come back to you, and then I'm going to come back to you, Jumana, because I know you have a hard stop. Tom, we hear that the Biden administration wants to hold a summit for the world's democracies. This was one of then candidate Biden's campaign commitment. Yet we're seeing, some of these gross violations or abuses happening within democracies. Our own democracy. I mean, we're yet another young Black man, actually a child, 13-year-old, was gunned down, and there's a horrific video of that. From our perspective, what the French government is doing is violating the religious freedom of Muslims. How can we walk this line in terms of asking less democratic governments and regimes to do better while we have issues in our own backyards in the so-called, democratic liberal world? I think we should do it, but how do we do it in a way that doesn't make us seem hypocritical, less hypocritical? And your microphone is not turned on yet. Here we go.
Thanks. Yeah. So before I take that, let me just add one thing to what Nuri said. And
I know I gave you a tough one too.
No, I get it all the time. It's really important that the United States speak in concert with other countries, not just alone, to China about what it's doing to the Uyghur people, and particularly, and this is the tough and sensitive piece of this, particularly leading countries in the Islamic world. In my travels in the Islamic world, I think I told you about a trip I took to Syria in the middle of the civil war, bombs falling all around, people fleeing and suffering. And one of the things a bunch of Syrians I met wanted to know from me is, what is America going to do to help the Rohingya people in Burma? Because that was on Al Jazeera. It was on all of the Islamic satellite channels, and they were concerned about their fellow Muslims being persecuted in Burma. Nobody asks me about the Uyghurs because they're scared of criticizing China. They're not scared of criticizing the United States if there's persecution if there's discrimination against Muslims in the United States, but they're scared of criticizing China, though it's, of course, much, much worse there. So that's something we should remember. To your question, the United States, I said the United States needs to practice being a model. We don't have to be perfect. What we need to show the world is that the United States is a country not free of injustice, but a country that has within it mechanisms for addressing injustice. We have violence by police against innocent people. We know that because we have a free press, which reports these things and tells us what we must do, that there's something we must do something about. We have independent courts. We have civil society organizations that can hold governments accountable. We have a free citizenry that can go out and demonstrate, as we did last summer in massive numbers after the murder of George Floyd. If China had these things, If China was not free of injustice, but enabled the Uyghur people to go out and freely demonstrate against the government, to challenge the government in court, to elect its own representatives to a Congress, to be able to advocate for different policies, that would be fantastic, right? It might not mean the end of persecution based on religion in China, but it would be 1,000 light years better, further from where they are right now. So we need to acknowledge our faults. We need to not be, not deny any of these things, and then point to what we as a free people in the United States are able to do about them. And that then becomes our message to the world.
Well said. That's very well said. Jumana, what is the most difficult thing you experience when you're dealing with communities as you try to move forward, move the human rights needle forward?
I think the biggest challenge, and this is not particular at all to the Muslim American or the Arab American community, but I think the biggest challenge for human rights defenders is finding creative ways to hold accountable, human rights offenders. So, culprits, people who have committed crimes. There's been a major pushback against the notion of the United States intervening militarily in order to, stop, for example, especially states from, encroaching upon the rights of their people and massacring basically their own people. We don't have the same kind of momentum that we did, for example, back for the Balkans intervention. Back in the 90s. We're very far away from that. You saw our withdrawal from Afghanistan yesterday. We obviously we have a very, very minor footprint in Syria, and that appetite continues to decrease. At the same time, you see a lot of people pushing back against the notion of sanctions, even if we try to target them as much as we can, like the Global Magnitsky Act, and a variety of other acts that are really targeted towards individual criminals and actors. There's still a huge pushback, I think, from a lot of people in the human rights community. And so I think what we're struggling with is being able to agree on what are tools left, because also turning a blind eye to these crimes is also not acceptable. We have to find a better way of holding them to account. Now, I may not necessarily be against utilizing either of these tools if need be, but a lot of people are pushing back on this notion on both of these tools, but are really not offering up, I think, alternatives. And I think that's going to be a challenge for our generation at large, is like, how do you, if I don't think it's an option to let wrongdoers off the hook forever. You may not be able to pin people down for those crimes in the immediate term. But I do think that we owe it to, the fact that we've created these multinational organizations to do this very thing, right? We've developed a whole body of international law to do this very thing. And I don't necessarily think we want to let go of those standards, but we may need to find a more creative way of pursuing those standards and upholding them. And I don't think the answer to that is an easy one. And so I think it's going to take a lot of creativity with people both inside of government and outside of government in order to pursue those objectives.
That's so true, Jumana, and we experience this particularly in conflicts in places such as Syria, where within the human rights community, there's real angst and disagreements regarding what's the best approach, especially with the legacies of the Iraq War and Afghanistan. I want to thank all of our speakers and participants. Thank you so much, Congressman Malinowski. Nuri, it's always such a pleasure to have you and to hear from you. And I can tell you that Emgage will be committed to the Uyghur people's liberation and freedom, just like all the people of the world and what they deserve. Jumana, thank you so much. Always excited to see what you come up with at the Atlantic Council and all the other projects that you work on. Thank you all for joining us. I want to make a pitch for our audience. If you care about these issues, you care about the human rights agenda at home and abroad, if you want to support real effective advocacy on these issues, if you want to empower the Muslim American electorate so its voice is heard, please support Emgage, support this gala, follow the links at the bottom of my screen and make your contribution now. It is the month of Ramadan, but as a nonprofit, we really depend and cherish your support. It is what sustains this organization. And on behalf of me and all of my staff and board members, we are always, always so appreciative of your support. Now, I'm told that there is one last special speaker that will be joining us via video, and it is Representative Judy Chu with her special message for Ramadan. So I'll turn it back to you, Aisha, and let's play that video for our audience.
Hello and Ramadan Mubarak. I am so happy to be joining with Emgage and all of you today at this time of joy, prayer, and reflection. And after the year we have had, all three are sorely needed. This has been an incredibly difficult year for all of us as our country has struggled with a dangerous pandemic and historic recession and historic grappling with issues of systemic racism, prejudice, and violence. That is why Ramadan, with its focus on connecting with others, is so welcome at this time. Typically, I know we would feel that togetherness at an iftar. In my district in Southern California, I so look forward to these opportunities for our community to share a meal and get to know each other more. But while the pandemic has unfortunately made those kinds of gatherings impossible for now, the good news is we are finally turning a corner. We have already far surpassed President Biden's initial goal of 100 million vaccines in 100 days, and we are still making progress with more vaccines administered every day in every state in the country. There is more good news as well. After years of division and xenophobia from the highest levels of government, we finally have a new administration that appreciates that our diversity is our strength. That means no more hateful policies like the Muslim ban. But even though President Biden took immediate action to repeal that ban, we need to make sure no other presidents can enact a similar ban in the future. That is why I introduced my No Ban Act, which passed the House last year and would ensure that no future president could unilaterally ban an entire group just because of their religion. And I'm proud to announce that just this week, the No Ban Act was marked up in the House Judiciary Committee, which means a floor vote is next. The Muslim ban wasn't just cruel for the way it divided families, it was dangerous in the way it promoted fear of Muslims and therefore more violence against the community. In fact, the entire Asian American community has experienced increased stigma and misinformation stemming from the coronavirus, which has led to over 3,800 reported anti-Asian hate crimes and incidents in the past year. It is clear that together we must stop hate crimes with better tracking and resources. That is why just last week I joined with Representative Don Beyer and others to introduce the bipartisan No Hate Act, which will provide local law enforcement with the resources and training necessary to improve hate crimes tracking and reporting. I know that our unity is our power and that together we can defeat hate and recover from this pandemic. So thank you again for inviting me to take part today, and I hope you have a joyous and meaningful Ramadan.
Well, thank you, thank you, thank you. I know we are in the countdown now to iftar time, but I just sincerely from the bottom of my heart, on behalf of the entire Emgage family, thank you for joining us tonight. Thank you for supporting our vision. But most importantly, thank you for allowing us to serve you. Enjoy your iftar this evening, and may the rest of your Ramadan close with strength, ease, and a multitude of blessings. We'll close with this final message, and I wish you a wonderful Ramadan. Assalamu alaikum.
I don't have to tell you that your voice is important. When you speak up, you create understanding, you break down barriers, and you bring about change. But our greatest power is when we're able to amplify our voices. we not only improve our community, together, we remake our world. Join us with a Ramadan donation to Emgage USA. We take action on the issues that matter most by amplifying our voices. Give today and commit to lasting change.